First comes the commercial. They did a good job on the transfer.
Construction, is that what it was?
Mm-hmm.
It remains a work in progress.
Yeah. There's Walter Light's original title.
At least everything's spelled properly.
Yes.
Spring 1958.
There's the tower. You know, there was a lot of fellowship involved here. There was only about 15 people when they wanted to get this underway. In order to finance it, each one kicked in $100, which was more than their take-home pay back in those years. Joe Grady, he was the driving force there. He'd start on Monday night calling people saying, "We're having a work party this week. We'd like to have you up Friday night." The guy'd say, "Well, I can't make it Friday." "Well, Saturday'll do," you know, and he'd work himself up to Sunday till he got the crowd there. And they say they broke ground. They did it the hard
They really
way.
broke ground, yes.
Well, the nature of the terrain
They
is
fractured the ground.
self-evident there. You have about 3 inches of soil and the rest is rocks.
In the one corner back there, that one big rock is still there as part of the foundation because they couldn't move it.
See, what they don't show is that they had to clear this area first. This was all wooded. One thing they did do with the trees that they felled, they let them lay over winter and they took them to the sawmill. And they got quite a bit of lumber from that way. There's Trumbore, there's Ralph.
That lumber was largely oak too, made nice beams.
That's Joe Grady and Ernie Smoder. She was a contractor and a good carpenter. He really built the wood part of the dome. There's heart attack on its way.
And these rock gardens don't keep on growing.
Yeah. I was surprised I saw one fellow I recognized, Ed Gilmore. Oh, this is one, Walter's daughter. This was right after they poured the footings.
Mm.
A lot of hard work went into that part too.
Ah, there's preserved for posterity.
By the time they got into this building thing, they had about 35, 40 members. And at least 25 or more were regular workers. Now we have 200 members. We still only have 25 regular workers. That must be Ernie
That's certainly what
S'mores.
this was.
He always had his fedora on.
Yeah, it's this fancy hat there.
Yeah. There's Ralph at his specialty with that big crowbar. There he is.
Puff, puff, puff.
There's Ernie lining it up.
Of course, we had some very skilled workers on those days too. A lot of these guys were builders, professionals.
That's right. We were lucky we had tradesmen. I mean, there's Wash Telepchek, did all kinds of interior, electrical, plumbing. This was one of the sons there. Chipping away. If you recognize anybody, just sing out, because I don't know them all.
I've forgotten who some of the early ones were.
Hmm. Yeah, there was no automatic work here. Everything was by hand.
What they call manual labor down in Mexico.
You know, these came up regularly every weekend. What this doesn't show then is later on there was the Friday night crew. But anyway, this one fellow we'll see in a little while, Frank Sarkozy, had a little truck, and every Friday night he'd load it up and bring it up, you know.
And every Friday night, if he was ready to go, he'd start his truck, be a popping sound, and the distributor lid would blow off. He had to get up and put it back on again.
Well, another time, you know, his wife was getting sort of fed up with this up here all the time. He's just about ready to leave, and she comes running out and says, you forgot something. He says, what did I forget? She said, your bed.
Ernie Zahner had, remember, he was not pretty early, he was around for quite a bit. Ernie Zahner?
Yes.
Of course,
yes.
he's not alive anymore, but he had wife trouble too. She was to throw sarcastic remarks on him as he left.
Hmm. There's Joe, always on the job. There's Kickline.
Yeah, at the time he was living in a foundation without the house on top of it.
Yeah. Full steam ahead now.
More Walter Light's whimsy.
Real slow motion.
Well, it's precision work, you
Yes.
see, without a 10th wave. Doesn't want to jaw the rest.
He had to be running that camera at about 48 to 64 frames a second
Yeah.
to achieve that slow motion.
There's Frank Sarkozy's truck.
He took an awful beating. He used to load the heck out of the thing. He
Yeah.
needed gravel or something.
You look at these pictures now, it looks like the building was much bigger than it actually is on these. Well, you just count, though, how many people were up there every week, you know? The fellow by the wheelbarrow, that's Bill Ferentz, he was the second director. He had the cheese store in Bethlehem. Cheese and gourmet foods. Oh, that's Ed Gilmore on the left.
Yeah, he's doing some work once in a while.
He went on to PerkinElmer. That's Bill. Got a lot of the young fellows working.
We were all young fellows in those days.
Well, there's some children in this later on, and I'm sure they're all grandparents now.
You probably are.
There's Bill again.
There's
There's Joe in the background.
a fellow named John Keeter, too, who was always going after Gloria Light. We never got anywhere with her, I guess. I think he's dead, too, come to think of it. Here's more slow motion stuff. There, gravity is letting up for the day.
Oh, I think he's where they spike up the lemonade here. There's Ed.
was a short mission, no time to go out for a beer or anything.
Remember when those cars looked like that?
Oh, some of those guys are worth good money today.
You have to admit that the cars look a lot better now.
Oh, cars, you look at them now
the
and you can't believe they were that big.
The designs are prettier now than they were. You wonder how the manufacturers came up with some of the styling.
Well, Joe really gave it a good blast. You know, about this time, pretty many of the wives were getting fed up with this. So Joe, what did he do? But he organized a ladies' auxiliary to come up here and have picnics on the weekends. And they got the whole family up here working. And it worked.
Sure.
There's Joe.
He always managed to get his face dirty pretty fast.
Yeah, he had quite a personality, you know. When I first came into the club to join, he came over to me and introduced himself, you know, and showed me around the place.
I remember
That's
the time.
Frank there.
Yes, I remember the time he was giving a planetarium show, and he had a pre-recorded audio to go along with it. But something started to happen. The projector got a little cranky, but the audio kept going mercilessly on, and he was going nuts to try to catch up to it.
That's Frank up on top. He's 84 now.
Yeah, he's been around a while.
I'm the youngest in the group.
You're a child of 7
There's Joe Frisch.
Yes.
Now, he lived all the way up in Copley, and he came down almost every week. He'd hitch a ride or take the bus into Allentown, try to hitch a ride up the hill, and if he couldn't, he walked up with his tools. More than one occasion, but he was here all the time.
He didn't drive, so sometimes his wife had to bring him up in his old Fraser. Remember that? That'd be a good specimen car to have today.
Yeah. There's Joe clowning. Could have some good music with this, you know. When I had the wings of an eagle or something like that. Angel. Joe Frisch on the right end there. He used to like to clown around with that old chamber pot he had.
Yeah.
They used to haul mortar around. There he goes.
Yeah.
Have to add some. Well, I remember setting another main beam in place, and boy,
They get heavy after a while.
that's Wash Telepchek there with the cap on. He was the 4th director. About 1961. Kick line on the end there.
It would appear that one of the perks of being the cinematographer got one out of a lot of the work.
Well, the answer to that was, he says, well, his work only started. He had to go home and develop the pictures, which he did. He did it all himself. The fellow there sitting down eating, that was Walter Petrisky. He was
their director.
He was the third director. Well, that was the proposal. Oh, this is where they had finally leveled off as best they could, and they got this mixture of sand and clay, and evened it out, let it pack down. Kickline always had his pipe, didn't he?
Always had it in his mouth, huh? He didn't
Yeah.
smoke it too much, but it was always in his mouth.
Yeah. These fellas might have been on a chain gang to get that much work out of them. You know, they were lucky. They got a lot of people to help out at reasonable fees.
Even the photographer, how about that?
Oh, that must be him by the wall.
There he is.
Actually, I knew Ernie Smodish and John Zawidiak even before the society started. There were three amateurs running around, those two and a projectionist named Gordon Jacoby. I don't know if he's still around or not. They're all basically radio hams. They used to run around the whole countryside.
Oh, that's when they borrowed our electric generator for their...
Yeah, for one of their
when they had a
field
field
meets with Hamfest, they call it, I guess.
and cranked up their equipment.
Ernie Smodish wanted to have a guy wire for his temporary tower, so he climbed up a nearby poplar tree. He found out later it was carved with poison ivy.
Oh, boy.
He must look like a Joe Pickle for a few days, I guess.
Oh, here's where they're going to frame in the dome. It's one thing you can see how it was cantilevered, a lot of these pieces around here. That road was another big job. They didn't get any pictures of that. And framing in the dome. I don't know that fellow on the right. That's Frank Sarkozy there. I think Walter said that's that 75-foot focal length mirror he has.
Probably is.
No, it's a lens actually. It's not a mirror. It's a lens.
Well, 1958 was the supposedly the end of the so-called geophysical year, when it was to coincide with the maximum of sunspot activity.
That was a pretty good session that year, too, as I remember.
Oh,
Where the spots goes.
that one of those Moonwatch telescopes?
Yeah, there's still some of those around.
Where they were getting set up to watch the first satellite.
They're so darn common now, you just ignore it. If you see one on the telescope, you just ignore it nowadays.
Yeah. I think Ernie Smodish took on the job of engineering the dome. He made all the arches, ribs. That's Wash Telepchek.
That's the centerpiece there, I guess, for the top of the dome.
Yeah.
I guess the little speaker isn't there anymore, though. Originally, there was a little speaker stuck at the top of that dome. I don't know if you ever used it, but it was there. I don't think it's there anymore.
No. Well, these are good shots. People can see how the thing was built. Really good documentary if we have to do repairs on the roof. Without ripping everything apart, you can see how it went together.
It's unfortunate that pressure-treated lumber wasn't available cheaply in those days.
No.
Would have paid us to use it all the way through.
This last roll, he must have used a different film. It's a little bit redder contrast. It's not as not as contrasty, I should say, better grayscale. You see on the trees now, the leaves are falling. This is towards the fall of the same year. That's why they're hustling, get it on the roof. And they made it too.
Just about in time for that lunar eclipse.
There's Ernie.
Remember that lunar eclipse early in '59? It was cold as devil that night. Snow on the ground and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a back room then. Just this room here.
I wasn't here for that. I only came down here in July of '59. But I viewed that from New York when I was still in New York.
You were in Long Island then.
Long Island. It was one after that, also in very cold December, the one that was a dark eclipse.
Yeah.
Nice fitting. Consider they had to shape those ordinary boards.
It took a lot of cutting, fancy cutting.
Yeah. There's Frank. There's Joe. There's the photographer. Shadow of the photographer. I think this is where they were digging for the septic system.
Yes. Snow. Now it's really late fall now, I guess.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
58. It was really quite an accomplishment. They got the thing under roof in 1 year. They starting late, well, I guess as early as they could, spring.
Actually, it was less than a year, actually, total time.
Yeah. Well, I know they started to use it in '60. Got doors on it. There's the electric generator.
There's
It
the
had that-
generator.
They used that to show movies at the meeting.
That's still sitting up at Fulton Rock, I guess, isn't it?
No, they sold that one.
You sold it finally?
Yeah.
I remember working at the war one time, I had to buy 2 exhaust belts for it. Didn't have any intake belts to stock any place in town. There's no Briggs & Stratton model ZZ, which is about as far back as they go.
Oh, early model. Huh?
Very early. Still worked okay though with the new valves. The rings are pretty good.
That's the way we got a lot of things.
Of course, I was used a few times at Purple Rock too before I got the power up there.
Yeah, they gave it a coating of that aluminized roofing compound. Actually, oh, there's the heating system, temporary. I guess it was kerosene burner. John Crothamel.
Yes, he's no longer around.
No, he was a painter, lived over in Allentown. It must have been like February of 1960, the first meeting I came here, and they they had the stove in the corner and the generator running out back, and they showed a movie for the meetings program. Now it's warmed up a little. Earl Botter. And one thing I didn't realize, that they actually stuccoed one side of this building. Just one side, the back, looks like.
Ah, here comes Maurer.
Oh yes, the neighbor.
He's the one on top.
They said he was a real friendly guy. Used to get them water and lend them tools.
Yeah. He was a very handy guy to have around at first.
Yeah. This you should remember, Paul. Not necessarily all of this, but that 10-inch telescope out back.
There in the back room.
There it is.
There's a 10-inch scope right there.
Yep.
The Friday nighters, around 11:30 or so, we get ready to pack it in. If it was a clear night, you'd put the optics in and spend another hour or so. That was a good telescope.
It was that one of Joe Fitch's mirrors, I guess, wasn't it? Or was it?
No, I don't think so. I forget the. It was supposedly 2 people worked for Mack Truck that built those mountings, and I'm not sure who made the mirror. But I recall the one night, it was one of those nights where it was clear but just a slight haze, and Saturn was high, and we could see the rings clearly, the separation, and a part of the crepe ring in that telescope. I've never seen it as well around here before and since. You must have peered through that at one time, didn't you, Paul?
I don't think that I ever looked through it. I'm trying to recall the period of the openings and closings of the rings, and I suspect that in about that time, 1960 or thereabouts, the rings would have been at their widest aspect. In other words, they would have been opened.
Yeah.
At 65, by 1965 was the first edgewise appearance of the rings that I can recall that we spent much time observation.
Yeah, they're hauling this material for
There's a
smooth out.
symbolic gold strike there.
Sarkozy's truck, but you said it took a beating.
It's the old gravel pit there, we should get on with it and put about 2 tons in the thing, I guess, this so-called half-ton truck. Of course, I had 3,000 pounds in my half-ton truck one time, didn't bother too much. We were building our shop where we had a bunch of I-beams on that thing. Not in the most illegal fashion, but back in '56 it was fussy.
Well, that was a great thing. For now and evermore.
We'll go down in history, way down.
Time travel
Yes.
with Walter Light's movie camera.
Well, last time they were cleaning up this place, that film almost went out, and I salvaged it. Made sure it was put away in a clean can, and
There's a
So
couple
we
of
got it.
episodes there where clean-out crews came along to see about everything in sight, whether they had any idea it was good for anything or not.
oh yeah, well,
Ralph ran around afterwards, Frankie down below, picking things up, bringing them back in again. He brought almost as much back in as they threw out in the first place.
that's right. Oh, there was a time there with Ralph and Joe Grady. Joe Grady wanted to clean up the place, and Ralph was saving everything. So Joe Grady cleaned out everything and put it in the back ready for the treasure. Ralph came up and carried it all back in again.
Well, we were children of the Depression, and therefore we didn't believe in throwing things away. You
It
never
was a
knew
lot
when you were
different.
going to need
You know,
it.
at the time, it was most cases the man was the breadwinner and the wife was home, and nowadays you got both parties working, and trying to get people together to pitch in on any kind of job like this would be pretty difficult,
Yes.
if at all possible.
Of course, in those days, too, if a guy didn't have much money, he wouldn't buy something. Nowadays, they just go into hock.
Yeah.